Welcome to Beyond Rent, the property management podcast brought to you by Rent Manager. Each episode, we sit down with an expert to talk industry updates, tech solutions, and top tips for those in the property management space. And now, let's get to the conversation and go Beyond Rent.
Hey everyone, and welcome to Beyond Rent. Today we have two guests joining us in our recording studio, and we're going to discuss the changes in our industry as it relates to income verification, right? That process that we all know when you're screening an applicant and how you verify their income. So I'm really excited to learn more about this. And as a quick reminder, this podcast now has video. So if you want to watch Beyond Rent, the video portion, make sure you check out the links in the show notes. Now let's get to the conversation and talk about income verification. Ashli and George, welcome to Beyond Rent.
Thanks for having us.
Yeah, thanks for having us.
Yeah, I'm really excited about this conversation, and thanks for coming in studio to record this one. The screening process continues to change. People are always looking for ways to streamline it, but also stay compliant and avoid fraud, all of those good things. But before we talk about that, let's get to know both of you a little bit better. Ashli, go ahead and introduce yourself.
Well, thanks so much for having us, Joe. Appreciate it. So my name is Ashli Allen. I am the Vice President of Vendor Relations with AmRent, a resident screening provider that is integrated with Rent Manager, property management software that you know very well, obviously. So that's how we know each other. We've been partners for at least 15 years. And as Rent Manager is a part of a group of companies, AmRent is a part of a group of companies as well. So that's how I know George, who is with Ibbie.
Yeah, so my name's George Homoelle. Like Ashli said, I work with Ibbie. I'm the Vice President of Business Development there. We're a sister company of AmRent, and we are what powers the new AmRent product, income verification, that's now integrated with Rent Manager.
Yeah, and we've enjoyed the partnership with AmRent for many, many years. So now to kind of have a new product for income verification is super exciting. Now we're getting to work with the Ibbie team as well. It's worked out really well. We're really happy with where things are headed. And I'm really excited about our conversation. So let's talk about income verification. And I guess maybe a good place to start is talking about the current state of fraud as it relates to the screening process. What can you share with the audience about where we're at with it? Maybe some updates or maybe major risks that kind of are involved with the fraud portion of it.
Yeah, I think fraud is really what has pushed the need to properly verify someone's income. And I am going to just read a quote from an article that the National Apartment Association released in April of 2024. It said that of the surveys that they did, 6 out of every 7 respondents said fraud currently reduces income or increases costs by 10%. I guess that's the issue, that the multifamily industry and the rental industry as a whole, whether it's manufactured housing, single family rentals, it really doesn't matter. Fraud has become a pandemic that they have experienced. And one of the huge issues is the income fraud, that they get applicants in and they realize later after they've moved in that this person, in fact, cannot afford to pay the rent. And so that's kind of where we're coming from, is trying to relieve the pressure that the industry is facing.
Yeah, I think one of the more popular ways that people fraudulently, represent their income is via pay stubs. And that is the most common way to verify income. And so finding different ways to verify income that maybe is not via traditional pay stubs or PDF bank statements or anything like that is something that we've tried to identify and solve for our customers.
Yeah, and I think people are always looking for new ways to solve, I guess, age-old problems, right? This isn't a new problem per se, but I'd imagine there are more ways to commit fraud now than there was in the past, or maybe it's easier or just more well-known at this point. So when we think about the actual resident screening process, and you talked a little bit about, fraudulent pay stubs, how are people producing these fraudulent pay stubs? What does that even look like? Because that seems crazy that that is even possible.
I always say you can Google anything and you can buy anything. It is kind of entertaining in one way, but also very terrifying that you can go out to Google and type in purchase a pay stub, and you can go to websites, There's websites, literally generatepaystub.com, and they have packages. The packages are a wide variety depending on how much the person wants to pay. I mean, they can just pay for a couple pay stubs. They can pay for a couple of fake bank statements. They can pay for the whole thing, a brand new identity. You can just get all new things, a new social security number, everything. So at this point, because you can literally Google anything, it's become very common for this to be used as a way to fake their income.
This is not an endorsement of generatepaystubs.com.
Not at all.
Well, but I think it's awareness, right?
Yeah, no, absolutely.
So as the audience listens to this and they think about like the different types of fraud and maybe what they're seeing or not seeing, if you don't know that exists, you need to be aware of it. And how are you going to work around that, right? What does your current process look like, and how are you protecting your company from these bad actors that are out there?
Yeah, and you would see, traditionally, people editing a PDF or editing an existing pay stub to make it look like their income is something different. But now with the age of AI, you can just generate something that you really cannot distinguish. And so property managers are less looking at the income and verifying it, and they're more kind of staring and comparing and analyzing something that they're not sure is for real.
I also think not just Googling and obviously editing a PDF, purchasing a PDF, whatever you're doing. One of our coworkers, she likes to show me the TikTok videos as well. So this is across all age groups, all demographics. People are out there advertising themselves as being able to provide this fake information. You just Venmo them, PayPal them, Apple Pay them. They'll pretty much take it anyway. And they can just send you over so that you don't have to have Adobe Editor and you don't have to switch these numbers around. And it's okay. You can get that nice apartment that you really wanted. So
as new technology has come around, like you said, AI and the ability to edit things, this is a growing problem in the industry.
Yeah, definitely.
It's huge. I mean, the crazy thing too is when you think of that figure that I gave from the NAA, about 6 out of 7 respondents have an increase of 10% because of fraud. That number is most likely going to just keep growing as people get more savvy. And I also think it's not always just people that are being devious. Sometimes it's people that legitimately just want a better place to live.
Yeah.
They think they can afford it. They want that better school. They want a safer environment for their children. And this is the outcome.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. And I think one of the things that I've noticed, because I'm a little newer to this industry, we came into this thinking, we're going to create this more efficient way to verify your income. It's more secure, and it is all those things. But what we've learned with interactions with customers is really this is solving a fraud problem where, they don't want to kind of go through this process with the consumer or the applicant and trying to verify their income and staring and comparing with all these other documents. So they're coming to us and they're saying, hey, we're actually using your product instead of this other version that we did, or in addition to. So we still have customers that get pay stubs like they normally do, and then they'll get our product as well, and they'll go ahead and compare the two of them then as more of a fraud prevention technique rather than full on just getting rid of pay stubs. It's kind of interesting the different use cases we've seen this, especially as, for me, a newcomer to this industry. So
for those that aren't using, I would say, technology to verify income right now, what does that traditional process look like? You talk about comparing documentation. I mean, property managers, leasing agents, whatever role is involved at this point, what are they doing? Like, what does that process even look like for them without technology? How are they verifying?
Well, it depends on the process they have of accepting applications. So for someone that's taking a paper application still, when that applicant hands that in, they're probably asking them to also bring a few pay stubs. I've heard companies are trying to stay on top of this, and they'll ask for maybe 3 or 4 consecutive pay stubs. They may ask for them to bring in a bank statement, possibly W-2s. They're asking for that physical documentation. And then, of course, for companies that have migrated to online applications, as a lot in the industry have, they're having it be required in the application process. So before the individual can complete the application, pay maybe any fees, they are required to upload documentation. And so a customer, again, they may give them a few options of pay stubs, W-2s, maybe things that they're comfortable with, and bank statements maybe for those that they have a side gig, they own their own business, so maybe they don't have a traditional pay stub. So then they're able to upload these bank statements that show what's getting deposited into their account. And that can be done during the application process. It can be uploaded right then. And then they expect the leasing agent has to sit there and review that data. They have to put eyes on it and physically go through and look for anomalies.
So of all the things a leasing agent does, now they have to be an expert in understanding these documents, first of all, but then also trying to spot ones that might be fake.
Yeah,
absolutely. Yeah, which is, to be fair, it's an industry with kind of a high turnover rate. So you're always training these new leasing agents or whoever's going to be verifying the applicant's information. And like you said, you're asking them to do a lot more than you used to have to do 10, 15 years ago. And then you're adding into the fact that maybe I'm training someone new every couple months or every 6 months or a year or something like that. And it just becomes a laborious process for the property manager themselves.
And I can't imagine that's a fun process for the applicant either, right? Like if you were to say, hey, Joe, can you go give me a W-2 and pay stubs? Yeah, we've got payroll software. I can log in and download it. But that's not a quick process for a lot of people. And some people might not be able to get quick access to it.
I don't know if anyone's like me. I never remember my login ID for our payroll software ever. So every year when it's tax time, the process of me getting my W-2 just for that is painful. So you think an applicant, in a lot of instances, they're on their cell phone. They're trying to fill out this application. They're trying to access pay stubs. Then maybe they're like, okay, forget this. They go to their banking app. They're logging in. Now, how do you download that PDF to their phone that they can then upload it onto their application or figure out how to print it off so that they can submit it with the paper application? I mean, you can quickly see the applicant getting frustrated with the process.
Yeah. From personal experience, I think asking for pay stubs even, I'm like, when I was first applying for apartments, a long time ago, it was as someone that was just moving out of your parents' home, graduated college, you're like, I don't even know what a pay stub is at that point hardly. And then how do you get it? And if you use this kind of HR software, you can get it that way. But if you work for a small employer, you may have to interact directly with the owner of that business and say, hey, can you get this for me? Because I'm trying to get into this apartment by next week. And then you're kind of on their schedule. So it becomes this whole thing that you're just trying to get housing. That's all you're trying to do. And it's not exactly fun for the consumer.
Yeah, and I could see applicants giving up on applying if it's really, really, I guess, challenging for them to complete the process, and maybe they go somewhere else and it's easier and they're like, well, I'm going to apply over here simply because it's easier. I don't know how to get all the information that they're wanting from me. Or maybe they don't even want to share that kind of information either, right? Because you are handing over documentation that somebody can take and have access to all of that data. And let's be honest, like you don't know that leasing agent as the applicant. You don't trust that person yet because you're not living there.
Yeah, exactly. It could be, you could be handing them documentation that is very personal to you, that could be exposed in any way, in a negative way for the consumer. That could be a physical copy, or it could be a non-secure email that you're sending it, and that can get intercepted in some way. And so making it better for the consumer, not just as an experience, but also from a security standpoint, is something that the industry, I think, is trying to identify and solve.
Yeah, and are you seeing that in the industry where not only are the property managers concerned about their experience, but they're talking about the actual resident experience, the applicant experience as well?
Definitely. I mean, we're in the housing industry. We get the privilege of providing a basic need. And I think in speaking to many in the property management industry, they recognize that. They recognize that the customer experience, that whole process starts the minute they apply. It doesn't start the day they sign the lease or the day they get the keys. It's the day they apply. Their first impression of that property management company kind of sets the tone for their experience and their decision to live there, to make that community their home. And yeah, I think there is concern over the application process. How smooth is it for the individual? How comfortable do they feel? And how quickly can they fill it out so that you can figure out if they can live there or not, especially with the demand. There's a lot of people applying as well.
There's a lot of demand. And you're right. On the technology side, it's easy, I think, for someone like myself to distance myself from this idea that we are providing housing. But I try to remind myself of that. But I think those that are working on site and with residents, they do recognize that it is a privilege to be able to provide that foundational part of living with housing and how important that is. And we should make it easy for people to get housing. It should not be hard.
It shouldn't be complicated.
Not at all. We all need a place to live, right?
We do.
Yeah, absolutely. But at the same time, as the property manager, you want to make sure that you're getting a good applicant into their home so that they do pay it. They pay rent on time. They're not, dealing with any kind of, any negative consequences as a result of a bad pay stub or something like that in the future.
Correct. And when we talk about that experience, and you mentioned earlier, some people might, submit a fake pay stub because they're just trying to get into that right neighborhood, that right place for what they need out of their life. But the reality is if they can't afford it, it will end poorly for everyone involved, not just the property manager. That's going to be a bad experience for that resident as well. You don't want to set somebody up for a bad financial decision as well. So we are really trying to help everyone through this process.
Right. And the more, in reality, the more a property management company loses, the more out of pocket, they have to recoup that somewhere, which could reflect in the rents, which then makes it more challenging. So all around, it's just a cycle. It's a whole cycle that has a domino effect. Each decision that's made, from how you have someone apply, what you require that they provide, to what application they're filling out, either paper or online, the whole thing. And then the technology you're using to confirm if they meet your property criteria or not. The whole process has this domino effect that comes down to who lives there and for finances, which is very important for the management company as well.
So let's talk about how technology can come in and make this a better process. So we understand kind of the pain points that exist, the fraud that exists, maybe a poor experience that might exist. Where does this fit in on the technology side? Where are we headed with income verification?
Go ahead.
Okay, I was going to say, so obviously there's traditional screening. That's existed for many years. You can use products that already exist to authenticate someone's identity. And you can look at their credit file to see what their standing is financially. You can obviously, if you're legally allowed, look at certain criminal records. You can look at eviction records to make that decision on their financial standing from that aspect. But what really comes down to is, what is their standing for their income? Do they have the money coming in that can then go out to pay? And that has to be addressed because it is an issue. So that's where this income verification process really comes in, and it's consumer permissioned is the phrase that we're using to describe it. So George, do you want to kind of describe the process of what it looks like for this consumer permissioned product?
Yeah, absolutely. So very high level, the Ibbie or income verification process with AmRent at least is what we call consumer permissioned, but very high level, like I said, is really just bank statement data or bank statement income data. So what the process looks like is the property manager will create this order that then sends a text or an email to the applicant. The applicant will click on the link that's in that text that we send them or email. And then once they click on that link, they grant consent to us, Ibbie, to proceed with the transaction. And then what they'll do from there is they'll select their financial institution. They'll log in directly with the financial institution. And then from there, they select the accounts they want to send over. Generally, it will just be the accounts that they receive their paycheck in. And then they're done. They click next and you're finished. It's like a 1-minute process. It's very quick, very easy. We don't save the data. We're not maintaining any passwords or anything. We're purging the reports after a couple months for compliance reasons and all that stuff. So it's a very consumer-focused model on our side, but also we want to provide the property managers a better tool for verifying income that Really, it can't be manipulated in any way. So like I said, the consumer can select the accounts they send over, but they can't change the transaction data that's sent over. They can't change the amounts or the memo line or anything like that. They're just getting basically raw statement data directly from the financial institution. And then the property manager will just look at that. They'll verify the income from there and proceed with whatever they need to do next.
So how does that report, that data compare to maybe what they've historically been able to see, right? Because when you look at a bank statement, when you see income, you see deposits in there and so forth. But there's a lot more data on a pay stub than what you would see on a bank statement. Is that a pro or a con in this scenario? How does that data compare?
Yeah, it depends on the customer, honestly. But there is a lot more information on a bank statement. So for our product, we are generally showing all deposit information. So we have a really good model and logic behind the scenes that can detect what payroll is. And so we'll categorize that automatically for our customers. And then anything else that's potential income or maybe like a Venmo transaction where their friends paid them, that's going to show up in there as well. But in the rare case where maybe there's additional income from like a gig job or something like that that we're not detecting, that's going to show up in there as well. So all your income from whatever source, if you have multiple jobs, that's all going to be in one place, which is really nice. And it's going to be net pay. So obviously the industry has traditionally been gross focused. We're net focused because it's just coming straight from the bank. And we actually can talk to this a little bit. We can, at least with Rent Manager and AmRent, we can adjust your algorithms and your models, and looking at rather than 3 times gross rent, you can look at 2.5 times or something like that. That looks maybe a little more accurate as to what you're actually receiving, because your gross pay, so much of that is going to taxes anyway. So if I make $1,000 gross, it's going to be, I don't know, $750 or something net, and
Right.
That's a lot different. That's 25% different, and so that could be the difference between being able to afford rent and not.
I also think it's becoming very common for these like side jobs. I don't know how many people I hear talk about, oh, well, I'll drive Uber on the weekend.
Right.
Or, oh, well, I have an Etsy shop and I sell stuff. And people are making income in very unique ways. And so they may have a traditional 9-to-5 job. And the property management industry is very used to this. You own maybe rental homes, but you have a 9-to-5 job that you go to. That's very common. So the challenge is someone may technically make income, but when you ask for pay stubs, they're just giving you the one job. Mm-hmm. They don't know what to do. How do you provide the income listed for Etsy that you're randomly selling these items, or you have this side gig that you're doing. So this allows the applicant the opportunity to provide all of their data so that it's in one spot, that a fair decision can then be made.
Yeah, and it's really interesting too, because earlier you spoke a little bit about people wanting to maybe upgrade their living situation. Historically, with the older model of verifying income, like you said, they would provide one pay stub and that's all they were getting credit for. Where now, if that person is really motivated to upgrade their standard of living and afford a nicer place to live, they can go work side jobs. Yeah. And this product allows them to get credit for the other income they're earning and prove they can afford it, right? Yep. So now it's almost a motivator to go work harder.
It is. And it's an opportunity for that property manager to have confidence in the person that they're moving in, that they know, like, this person really wants this. They want to live here. They want to enjoy a home. They want a clean, safe environment, and they're motivated. They're working for it, and their bank statement is the proof of that.
It's proof, yeah. And I think that's great. And you talked about the difference of gross versus net, and it does seem a little odd that we base so much off of our gross income, right? You taxes, but also benefits, other things that are coming out of that gross. Like, how much do you really have to put towards living or other bills that you have? It is a better representation at the end of the day. Yeah, no, it absolutely is. And I think we're seeing that not just in this industry moving towards net, or at least being open towards it. But recently, I know in the mortgage industry, which is where my experience comes from, these similar providers to what I do,
the GSEs, Fannie Mae, Freddie Mac, they now accept this kind of technology, which is really net income, as a form of verification of income, where for the last many years, that's kind of been their big roadblock, is they needed it to be gross. And these asset verification tools, which is, the mortgage version of this, wasn't able to do. And so I think we're going to see that trickle down or trickle over or whatever you want to say into this industry as well. And I actually think, at least in my experience, property managers are much more open to using this because, like you said, everybody sees, oh yeah, this is what's actually in my bank account. This isn't what I'm getting gross pay from. And like for me, I know what my biweekly paycheck is because I see it in my bank account. And I know what my yearly salary is, and I'm like, that doesn't match up.
It's not adding up.
It's not the same thing. So
No, and we all face that, right? And that's common. And I do think there are a lot of correlations between, you would say, like the mortgage lending industry and the rental property industry. And I think they are getting closer over time. I think years ago they were very, very different. And we could talk about how payments for mortgage get reported to credit bureaus versus how rent gets reported. And even that's starting to improve as well. So I think this is just another sign that we are becoming more sophisticated in how we provide a really good experience across the board for the residents and applicants. And so help me understand a little bit about how income verification using technology like this fits into the traditional screening model. You spoke a little bit about looking at their credit score and some other background things. How does this fit into that? Is that just part of the process now? Is it coming before, after? Where does it fit?
What I think is wonderful about the rental industry is how unique everyone does things. Everyone's very different in their process, and this fits the same into that uniqueness. So for one company, they may decide income is the most important thing. Let's kick off an income verification before we do any other type of screening. For another company, it may be the opposite. They may rather have their traditional screening be completed before they start this income verification process. For some, it's going to happen at the same time. But I think that's what makes it really nice, is that it can fit into your model and how you do things, but also the fact that within the country, there are various laws, regulations impacting how the screening works, what you can use in screening, the process of screening. And this can kind of alleviate some of that frustration. Certain parts of the country, the state of New Jersey as an example, you have to do all other verifications before you can do a criminal search. So this can be one of the first steps that you can take if you want. You can verify their income. Then you can, if you want, you can look for credit. You can look for their score. You can look for evictions, do that conditional offer, and then move on to a criminal search. So I think that's what makes it so great, is how unique we are as an industry. We all do things a little bit differently. And this product really allows for that flexibility.
And I don't know much about the mortgage industry, but I feel like the mortgage might be a little more consistent from one lender to the next, where our industry just isn't. And a lot of it is state and local regulations that dictate it, where other people, it's a business decision, right? And it's great to know that there's technology out there that's allowing people to customize how they operate so they can meet their individual business goals. And our industry is really vast in the types of businesses that are out there, the size and the scope, and are they an owner operator versus, fee-based management? There's all these different nuances that really matter in how they leverage technology.
Yeah, no, I think one of the biggest learnings I've had working with property managers is how different everybody does things and how great that is. The reality I think we've learned and we're experiencing, at least in this industry, is we've seen this as alternative or supplemental credit, this kind of data. Because that's really what you're doing. You're making a credit underwriting decision with this kind of data by verifying income. And I think the rental industry as a whole seems to be embracing that on a much wider basis because everybody does things a little bit differently. And everybody's, they're willing to think a little more outside the box and think, yeah, I'll do this income verification report a little earlier. Maybe it's the only thing I do, or it's the first thing I do. And I think that's really cool. I think it's very different and has been something for me that I've had to adjust to. But it's like, okay, this is, I think that's why we've focused so much on this and why we've partnered with you guys and AmRent to bring this product to your customers and our customers, because I think this is something that can help bring your industry forward in a very secure way. I think you're reducing fraud, at least you're helping reduce fraud. And like I said earlier, this is used in different ways, even depending on when it's used, it's different, and how it's used. So like I said earlier, the example of some people get pay stubs and this product. Some people only get this. Sometimes they run this first, and then if they don't like what they see, then they'll get pay stubs. It's kind of weird. Like, everybody uses it just a little bit differently. And I think internally we were like, how do we pitch this? But, I think that's kind of ended up being determined by the customer ultimately. Absolutely.
So if our audience is looking at income verification, let's say they're still more of a traditional model, they're collecting pay stubs, whether that's through the application, through a digital means, or they're having people print things out and bring it into their office. If they're looking at using technology, what are some of the things that they should know before they start using this product? Like, what should they be thinking about before they execute?
That's a great question. I think one of the first things is acknowledging that you are going to have to communicate with your applicant differently. The applicant, in some areas, they're going to be very used to that. If they've rented a lot, if they've moved a lot, they're used to that whole pay stub process. Even though it's very frustrating, they're aware of it. And now they're getting this text message or this email link. So communication is going to be very important, helping them to understand what it is, why you're doing it, and how secure it is. I think that's vital too. You want your applicant to have confidence in what you're doing, that they're not going to be worried, because that would be my first thought. Why am I doing this? You want that confidence in there. And then also, I think people need to be aware of working with their leasing agents. This consumer permission product is more common now in our industry. It's really gaining traction, but high turnover, George mentioned earlier, very high turnover. So this will alleviate some pressure, but you still are going to need to work with your team and get their buy-in. Make sure they're going to be comfortable with communicating with the applicant, with making sure these links are being followed by the applicant. You want your staff to have buy-in so that they have confidence in it as well.
Yeah, I can't second that enough. I think it is amazing to see the comparisons of like the success rate when the communication improves. So we'll roll out, for example, with a new customer, and maybe they're just sending links willy-nilly to whoever. And me as a random consumer, I'm going to be like, what is this? I'm not clicking on this. So we always
junk.
Honestly. And I think that happens because I can see internally. I'm like, they never even clicked on this. So, but when we educate our customers on, the more involved you are with your consumer or your applicant, and the more they know ahead of time that this is coming, they're going to do it. Your success rate's going to go through the roof, and we've seen that. And ultimately, I think for Ashli and I, this is new because we don't do a lot of interaction with consumers directly, and so we've had to kind of figure this out. But the communication is by far the biggest key to success with this. Is just letting them know this is coming. Secondly, we're not storing your data. We're not maintaining your password. It's a one and done thing. So if you ever have to verify income again, we're not going to refresh it because we actually don't have your credentials anymore. We have to go through the whole process again. And from the consumer side, that's been our focus. We want to protect the consumer. They just don't necessarily know that if they just get this random text. So
yeah, that's really interesting. Just because something is better doesn't mean someone will be comfortable with it. Right. And I think that's what you're seeing here. And you're right. We've been told for years, do not click on any links that you don't recognize.
Exactly.
Right. And now we're sending out a link and saying, hey, could you click on this? And by the way, can you log into your bank?
Right.
To verify your income. But if I'm being told that in advance, like this is how it works, don't be alarmed. Now I'm expecting it, which is one of the key things they talk about through like data security, fraud, and all of those things. Like, did you expect to receive this? Then it's probably valid and it's okay to click on it. So that's great. And obviously our teams are all going to be focused on how do we help that property manager, that leasing agent have the right communication with the applicant so they can get through the process. Wow. So that's great. So as we kind of round the corner and come to the end of the episode, if people that are listening want to learn more about income verification, what's the best process? What should they do next?
I would say the best thing to do is to navigate to AmRent's website. It's AmRent.com. You can select the contact us. You can get more info page, submit a request. We are more than happy to just chat about it. There's no pressure. I'm sure, some people, they like to make a decision, take a product and start using it. Others more methodical. They have questions. Our team would be more than happy to just talk through the process. Even the data security, want to make sure everyone has confidence that they feel empowered to use it. So that would probably be the best way, is to just go out to our website and request more information.
That's great. We'll drop that link in the show notes. And I do think that's an important step because, like you both have said, anyone out there in the field, they need to figure out how this fits into their current process. Is it replacing? Is it supplementing? Is it first? Is it last? Is it somewhere in the middle?
To whatever you want it to be.
So. That's right. Fully customizable. So, well, wonderful. Well, Ashli and George, thank you for coming out and recording this episode with us. We're really excited about income verification and where technology is headed and how we help both the property manager and the resident improve their processes.
Yeah. Thanks for having us, Joe. We appreciate it.
Yeah. Thanks so much. Really do appreciate having us here.
Yeah. Thank you. And thank you to the audience for joining us for another episode. And until next time, keep going beyond rent.
Thanks for joining us for this episode of Beyond Rent. If you enjoyed this podcast, spread the word on social media and with your peers in the industry. To be notified when more episodes are released, subscribe using your favorite podcast player. Beyond Rent is brought to you by Rent Manager Property Management Software. Learn more about Rent Manager's industry-leading software solutions at rentmanager.com. Until next time, keep going beyond rent.